guys, welcome back to my channel. So, a while back, I made a Sephiroth doll. And if y'all watched that doll, and also if you watched one of my haul videos, then you know that for that doll, I actually bought a really cool Aliexpress doll, but I bought it at the beginning of COVID. So, it took a really long time to get to me, and I just got really impatient and opted to use a BTS doll instead. That doll did eventually arrive, and when it did, I was like, oh, this is so cool. I want to make something with it. After some contemplation, I came to the conclusion that he would be a perfect base for an Alucard doll. Specifically, we're making a Castlevania Alucard, so not Hellsing. And I really love the Castlevania anime. And I also love the aesthetics or the art for the Symphony of the Night Castlevania game. So that is what we're going to be basing this doll's look or design after. Anyway, with all that being said, let's get started. This doll has very interesting joints and also sculpting. I'm just gonna put this out there. He has some of the most intense nipples I've ever seen on a fashion doll. I'm just saying. Also, his waist joint is like kind of hideous, but I like that he's so posable. I heat his head up with a blow dryer and pop his head off, and I know that most depictions of Alucard have very, very, very light blonde hair, but I decided we're going to keep the white hair because there are some depictions of him with white hair. I know 90% of them have blonde hair, but there's some that have white, and the hair quality on this doll was just so nice, like surprisingly nice, and I just didn't want to cut it off. We're going straight into the face up, so I spray the doll 3 times to Mr. Super Clear, waiting 15 minutes between each spray and wearing a respirator mask, and then we stop painting. As per usual, I begin with the eyes, and I would say that Alucard has very specific eyes. I looked at so many different depictions of Alucard, and to be honest, I'm kind of sick of looking at his face. But what I noticed from his eyes are that he has what I would describe and what I think a lot of people would describe, and I feel kind of corny saying this, but I believe he has bedroom eyes, which is when you have a very heavily lidded eye that creates a sort of dreamy look. Another thing that I noticed about his eyes is that the iris doesn't hit the waterline, like it's slightly above it, so I tried to capture that with his face up. I began his lips by laying down a muted pink pastel, but we're going to be layering that up with quite a bit of red pastel, so it looks pretty intense by the time we're done with it. I blush around his face with browns, purples, pinks, and blues. I mention this in literally every face up, but it's one of my favorite steps. I add veins that are just branch-like pencil marks around the eyes and the foreheads with my really, really, really light blue Faber-Castell watercolor pencil. Alucard has piercing yellow eyes, so I am creating a gradient with a darker yellow at the top of his iris that fades into a lighter yellow at the bottom. I highlight on his brow bone, underneath his eyes, his nostrils, and his chin with the white pan pastel. And I know I've talked about pan pastels in the past and just my love, especially for the lighter colored ones, but they just show up so well, which I just find is an issue with other light toned pastels. I think if you're going to get one of them, I would get the white one. It works really well, in particular on pale skin tone dolls like this. I give him some lip wrinkles with my red watercolor pencil by drawing lines going up and down his upper and lower lip. With this light nude watercolor pencil, I add a line of highlight to his waterline and also a dot of highlight to his inner corner. I gave him dark brown eyebrows, and in retrospect, I probably should have given him some lighter colored ones, but I didn't. So, hey. I shaded his lips pretty intensely with some black pastel because he's a vampire and I wanted to really lean into his gothy vampy self. I began adding highlight lines around his eyes and his lips with white watercolor pencil. I douse all my dolls in macro Pearl-X pigment, and this doll was no different. If anything, I put more sparkles on him because in the Castlevania world, I don't believe vampires are sparkly, but they are in other franchises, so... For his pupils, I go in with my black watercolor pencil and I add a little circle to the middle of his iris. And then I take a Q-tip and my gold Pearl-X pigment and tap that on top. In the areas where I put down white watercolor pencil, I actually wet that watercolor pencil and I'm going on top and just adding some further highlights with that. I'm not going over all of the lines that I put down with the white watercolor pencil, but I am just adding it to certain areas to emphasize those highlights and make them more crisp and intense. I love me a glowy eye, so I added a ring of highlight around his iris with very, very light yellow paint. I brightened up the white of his eye with white watercolors. With a lot of male dolls that I paint, I have to hold myself back a little bit because I naturally want to paint very feminine, pretty faces. But I didn't really find that to be the case with this doll because Alucard is a very beautiful man. So I didn't need to hold myself back as much, and that was really fun about this. Like his eyelashes, if you look at art of him, they're very like long and pretty. So I got to give him some long, luscious lashes instead of like holding myself back, which is what I tend to do when I do male faces. I feel like the only men that I've done on this channel have been like beautiful men, beautiful video game men. So the next male that I paint, I should try to maybe pick a not as beautiful man and just challenge myself a little bit because Even though I find male faces challenging, I do definitely find these more beautiful characters less challenging than I would if I was painting like, I don't know, like Solid Snake from Metal Gear Solid. With rose gold watercolors and also white watercolors, I add dots of highlights to his waterline. I tap a red Pearlex pigment on top of his lips. On to glossing the lips. This is Vallejo's gloss varnish. I want to find a different gloss, but I'm putting that on his mouth. This is how his face up turned out, and I actually did this doll I did his face up back in December, so like months ago, and it was before I painted my Mooka doll. And when I painted my Mooka doll, I came to the conclusion that it is better on these Barbie size heads to have a more simplistic approach to the eyes. And what I mean by that is, with the first version of Alucard's eyes, I tried to squeeze in all of the details that I normally do with Monster High dolls. Monster High dolls have way bigger eyes. You can draw them way bigger than on these like Barbie size heads. And when you try to get all those details into this tiny size, it just looks very cluttered. So I've come to the conclusion that a more simplistic approach on these Barbie doll size heads is more effective. Anyway, after blushing the face, I blushed the body with the same tones that I used on the face. I also painted his hands black because Alucard has gloves on, and this is how his head and his body look reunited. On to the clothes, the thing I'm best at. Can you like feel the sarcasm? So Alucard has kind of like a lot of layers to his outfit. The first thing that he has is a black long collared jacket. I'm using pleather for this because it's the only black stretchy fabric I have, but I'm using the matte side, not the shiny side. The first thing we do is sew his collar pieces together. I moved over to his sleeves and I gather stitched the top of them and sewed those in place. I sewed the two pieces of jacket together, good side to good side, on the middle of the back. Once that was sewn, I went through and hemmed everything, so the opening of the jacket, the bottom of the sleeves, and the bottom of the jacket. I then sewed the side panels of the jacket good side to good side and flipped it. For the design on Alucard's jacket, I painted that in with Arteza's gold fabric paint. To get it nice and pigmented so that it like stands out against the black, I did maybe 2 layers, I believe, over all of the design. Then we take the real MVP of this channel and also any doll repainter, which is nail art gems, and I glue those to act as buttons. If y'all don't know, maybe you're new to repainting, nail art gems and like nail art accessories and stuff are fantastic for doll repaints because they're very, very tiny. And here it is, and it looks like a jacket. I am impressed with myself, okay? I am not a seamstress. On to pants. So Alucard has like very simple black slacks on, so we're gonna be making some slacks. I think that word is like so funny. Anyway, I hem the top and the bottom of the pants, and then I sew them into like a tube, good side to good side. After that, we sew the slacks, sorry, up the crotch. And now his slacks. are done. Come through, slacks. I'm sorry. Moving on, we're going to be making a very simple white collared shirt. So I go through and I hem every single part of it. After the hemming is done, we sew the shoulders together good side to good side. Taking the collar, I sew that on the neckline. For the sleeves, I gather stitch the top and then we sew that in place. I pin the shirt good side to good side and sew up the side seam. The final step of the shirt is I hot glue some nail art gems to act or replicate buttons. And look at that, you got yourself a beautiful janky shirt. Moving on to one of the final and easiest parts of his outfit, which is the vest. I go through and I hem everything. So the bottom, the armhole, and the neck hole of the front and the back of the vest, as well as the opening to the front. I sewed the front and the back of the vest together at the shoulders as well as at the side seam. Time to decorate the vest. So I painted the trim of the vest in with my silver Arteza fabric paints. Alucard has like fancy little button bracket thingies on his vest, so I'm gonna be trying to recreate that with some Warbra and some craft glue and wire. So I cut out pieces of Warbra in the shape that I needed, and then I curled some wire and glued that in place with some craft glue. And here she is, and listen, is she perfect? No. Is she effective? Yes. I paint those button things with a layer of black acrylic paint and then silver acrylic paint. Then we just hot glue them in place. The vest buttons have a little curved metal bit that are connecting one vest button to the other side of the vest buttons. So we're going to be creating that with Warbra. I'm taking a little square of Warbra and I am heating it up so that it curls around my paintbrush. Once it's adequately curly, I paint it with a layer of black acrylic paint and then silver. Okay, so you know how I said the vest was easy? Well, the cape is even easier. So I cut this strip of fabric that is thinner towards the top and then wider towards the bottom. I painted the inside of the cape silver with silver fabric paint. The cape have these metal ornaments that are going to be holding the cape closed and also chained together in the end. So I cut them out of foam and painted them with a layer of black and then a layer of silver. After that dried, I decorated them with some more nail gems. Yay! We then hot glue those in place on either side of the cape. And here she is. It's a mood. Now for the boots. So I sewed around the leg basically in the way that you would make a sock. This is exactly the same. Once that was finished, I cut the excess fabric off. For the boots, I wanted it to be the pleather side of the fabric, so I flipped them. I created a sole for the shoe with Warbra, and I'm trying to get better at Warbra. I really am. Like, it seems so useful. I'm just not used to it, so I'm trying to be really patient. But I figured a good way to sort of get more used to it is just making a sole of a shoe out of it. So I heat that up with my blow dryer, and then I form it to the bottom of the foot. This is the end result, and it's okay. I wanted the sole to be a little bit more shoe-like, so I'm taking my trusty epoxy sculpt and I'm mushing it all together, and then I am creating the heel first, and I'm also going to be going around the toe of the shoe and sort of creating a point for that, so it just looks more boot-like. And there they are. They're starting to look a little bit more booty, I think. After the epoxy dries down, I sand the soles and also paint them black. With craft glue and an embroidery thread, I wanted the sole and fabric part of the shoe to have a nicer transition. So I'm taking craft glue and I'm just gluing that embroidery thread around where they meet. This is the end result of his little booties. Moving along to his sword. So I got these shish kebab skewers shish kebab skewers from my local grocery store, and I cut them down with a saw to cut off this little bit that's sticking out. I don't like it. After cutting it, the sides were kind of rough, so I'm whittling them down with an X-Acto blade. I'm also going to the top of the sword and making it sharper by whittling that down with my X-Acto blade as well. I created an indent in the middle of the sword with my saw, just kind of sawing back and forth so that there's a groove there. Once I was done doing that, I sanded it with some sandpaper. After the blade was all prepped, I cut 2 more pieces of the shish kebab skewers that are basically the same size, and I hot glued those to create the handle. Now that the base is all done, we gotta start adding the details. So I am doing that with my epoxy sculpt. I'm basically just molding some basic pieces onto the wood, and I'm going to be wrapping wire around the handle as well to create the texture that the sword that I'm trying to replicate has. I think this sword turned out pretty decent. Definitely better than the last time I made a sword. Calling back the Sephiroth sword. If you want to see a bad sword, go over there. Anyway, I paint the sword with a layer of black and then a layer of silver. I created a sheath for the sword by tracing around the blade to get the size, cutting 2 pieces, sewing those good side to good side, and flipping them. The sheath is going to be attaching to his belt, which I'm making out of Warbra, so I just cut a strip of Warbra out, heated it up with my hairdryer, and folded that around his waist. After I got the form that I wanted, I painted the belt brown with acrylic paint, and that is actually the last accessory. I'm going to be adding some very minor details off camera for this doll and also gluing and sewing some of these accessories in place because I find with video game character dolls, I just kind of have to do that because video game characters tend to have a lot of accessories that just lay in very specific ways. This is how he turned out and I'm so happy with him! Really, like, I don't know, when I first looked at Alucard, I was like, I don't know if I can recreate that, but I think I did. And it's just cool to have a doll of a video game character that you just love the aesthetics of. Like, I love Alucard specifically in this video game. And as I said earlier, I like Castlevania the anime. So, and I also just like making vampire dolls, by the way. Like, they're really fun. So if you guys like this doll, let me know down below if there are any video games that you love or video games that you made a video game character out of. Oh, by the way, I took some shots of him with Sephiroth. I thought it'd be cool to see Sephiroth with the doll base that he was supposed to be. I do still like Sephiroth, by the way, but I also think that this doll would make an excellent Sephiroth doll if anybody is looking to make a Sephiroth doll. I will link where I got this doll down in the description box from Aliexpress. And I believe this doll base, I don't think I mentioned this earlier in the video, but it is a Xin doll, which I think is a Chinese fashion doll. They also have a female doll, which looks really cool, and I kind of want to see if I can get one of those off Aliexpress, but I don't want to wait like 4 months, although I don't think I would have to wait that long now. But anyway, guys, let me know how you like this doll down below. Like this video if you like this video. Subscribe, it makes me happy. And I hope you guys are having a beautiful day. All right, bye! We'll be right back.